Hi, Mike here at DBU Recording Studio. This is the fifth in a series of drum mixing videos where we're taking raw drum tracks that sound like this, and we're mixing them into a final mix that sounds like this. In this video, we'll look at the snare. In this case, the snare was recorded with two mics, a top mic and a bottom mic, represented as these two tracks. Those are feeding into the snare bus. I'll start by disabling the plugins on the snare, and we will have a listen to what the raw snare sounds like in context. It's not bad, but it could use a bit of work. If I solo the snare, this is what we have for the raw snare sound. Looking at the top snare mic, I'll mute the bottom track. On the top track, the Renaissance channel from Waves is doing most of the work. We're cutting out the unwanted lows, adding a boosting shelf at the high end to add some shimmer, and applying a surgical cut at about 230 Hertz to get rid of some ringing. The expander is reducing the spill between hits, and the compressor is evening out the hits using the RVox mode. Let's bring in each of those components one at a time and see what that does for us. So that gets us most of the way there. The next plugin in the chain is the Cubase envelope shaper. Here we're just trimming the tail of the snare a bit to tighten things up. Here's a quick before and after. So that's sounding pretty good. The last plugin in the chain is a compressor, the Cubase built-in compressor, with its sidechain enabled. The kick track is feeding the sidechain, and that's causing a ducking action on the snare track to remove some of the spill that we're still getting from the kick that we don't want in the snare track. We won't hear that right now because the kick is muted, but it will have an effect on the overall mix when we get there. Turning now to the bottom snare mic. Again, the R channel is doing the work for us. And similarly to the top mic channel, we're cutting lows, boosting highs, using the expander and the compressor in the same way. On the EQ, we have an additional dip here at about 13K, at about 1.3K, to get rid of some harshness that's coming through at that frequency. Let's bring those components in one at a time on the bottom. So that's done a nice job. And again, like the top mic on the snare, we'll use the Cubase envelope shaper to tighten things up a bit by reducing the tail. Quick before and after on that. And that's our individual processing on this two snare tracks. Let's bring those back together. This is what we have. sounding pretty good. The final bit of processing is on the snare bus. The Cubase Studio EQ has a surgical cut at about 240 hertz. That's just getting rid of a little bit of more ringing that's still there that we didn't cut out when we treated the individual tracks. Quick before and after. And lastly, we have the Wave CLA 76 compressor to just bring in a bit of character. Let's hear that in context. And that's our basic drum mix. Next time, we'll add in a bit of reverb to do a bit of sweetening on that sound. And until then, this is Mike at DBU Recording Studio. Keep making music.